name is Matthew Clayton, and for 7 years, I worked as a 911 operator in a small Minnesota town. I'm 32 now, but that job aged me twice as fast. Nights on duty were always the same. Drunks fighting in parking lots, parents panicking over nothing, alarms that turned out to be wind. You learn to shut emotions off, to be a machine that talks, until one night something talks back. It happened during a heavy snowstorm, January 14th, 2021. I remember because the roads were closed and only 2 of us were on shift. Around 3 in the morning, the radio was dead silent. I was reading old case notes just to stay awake when the headset beeped. 911, what's your emergency? I said automatically. For a few seconds, there was only breathing. Then a woman whispered, "Please help me." "He's inside." Her voice was trembling, like every word hurt to say. I straightened up, clicked the call trace system. "Ma'am, who's inside?" "Do you know this person?" "No," she breathed. "He's just standing in my hallway." He's repeating me. Before I could answer, I heard another breath through the line. Male, hoarse, distorted, too close to the microphone. And then it spoke, repeating her sentence word for word, only a fraction of a second before she said it. The hairs on my arms rose. I flagged the call, dispatched a patrol to her address. "Stay calm," I told her. "Lock the door." "Where are you right now?" "In my bedroom. I can see his shadow under the door." "Okay, stay quiet. Officers are on their way." Then came a pause, long enough that I thought she dropped the phone. "Ma'am, are you still there?" Her voice came back smaller. He doesn't have a face." Something scraped across the receiver like fingernails. And then the man's voice repeated, "He doesn't have a face," followed by a faint laugh, raspy, mechanical, almost playful. I ripped off my headset, yelled for my supervisor, but when I put it back on, the line was dead. 9 minutes later, the patrol reached the address. The house was locked from the inside, no sign of a forced entry, only barefoot prints in the snow leading toward the woods. The woman was gone. I stayed long after my shift ended, replaying the audio. Every time, it was the same. The man's voice predicted her words, speaking them 1.3 seconds early. It wasn't an echo. It was something ahead of her. When I got a copy of the file the next morning, I listened with better headphones. This time, I could swear someone whispered my name between the static. I didn't write that in my report. A week later, an envelope showed up at the dispatch center. No return address. Inside, a flash drive and a note, recording from the 14th of January 2021. The file started the same, but after the line, "He's inside," the male voice didn't repeat her words. It said in that same low tone, "Now you." I froze. Then the audio glitched, the screen flickered, and my console phone began to ring. No caller ID, no number, just incoming. I answered, breathing, slow, deliberate. 911, what's your emergency?" I asked out of habit. A voice responded immediately. "You know." That was the last call I ever took. I quit 2 days later, but sometimes my home phone rings after midnight, always from an unknown number. When I answer, there's silence for a few seconds, then a faint echo of my own voice saying, "Hello," just a heartbeat before I do. My name is Michael Carter. I'm 35 years old and an electrical engineer. 3 years ago, I was sent on a business trip to a small industrial town in northern England to set up a monitoring system at an old metal processing plant. The company rented me a flat in a typical British council block, 5 stories of concrete, narrow stairwells, creaky doors, and the smell of old pipes. At first, everything seemed fine. The building felt empty but safe, clean hallways, a few elderly tenants, and a coffee vending machine downstairs that, by the way, never worked. My flat was 4B. Across the hall was 4A, where, according to the realtor, a quiet man lives, never bothers anyone. I didn't think much of it at the time. I saw him for the first time about a week later. It was late evening. I was coming back from the plant, exhausted. The hallway light was flickering like it was dying. He was standing right by his door. Tall, thin, mid-40s maybe, with wispy hair and a blank face. When I got closer, he turned his head and just stared. His eyes were pale gray, almost faded, and he didn't blink at all. I noticed that right away because we stood facing each other for nearly a minute. And nothing. Not a twitch. I said, "Good evening." He took a moment, like the words had to travel through mud. "The walls are too thin here," he said. That was it. He turned and went inside. After that, I started noticing things. Sometimes in the morning, his door would be slightly open and there'd be footprints on the doormat, like he'd been standing there for hours. A few times I heard faint noises, maybe a radio, maybe whispering, but whenever I got closer, the sound stopped. One night I woke up to a soft tapping, like someone lightly knocking on the radiator. The hallway light was off, but under his door I saw a thin strip of warm yellow light, the kind you get from an old lamp. I decided to look through the peephole. I wish I hadn't. He was standing right in front of my door, his eyes aimed directly at the peephole, unblinking. I jumped back, heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribs would crack. I stood there holding my breath. When I dared to look again, the hallway was empty. The next morning, I went to the building manager, a woman named Mrs. Henderson. I told her about the strange neighbor. She looked at me, tired and calm. "Flat 4A. Nobody lives there. It's been locked since the tenant passed away." I told her I saw him last night. She shook her head. "Mr. Ellis died over a year ago. Heart failure." I figured she was mistaken. Maybe some relative moved in without registering. To be sure, I waited in the hallway that evening. Lights off, I stood near the stairwell, half in the dark, and then he appeared. He climbed the stairs slowly, didn't turn on the light, walked right past me. Same face, same eyes, still not blinking. I wanted to call Mrs. Henderson, but at that moment his door opened, silently, as if the lock just gave up. Inside there was nothing. No furniture, no light. Just darkness, thick and hollow, like the air was wrong inside. I took a step back, then another. Closed my eyes for a second. When I looked again, the door was shut tight, as if it had never opened. A few days later, I left for another city. The contract was over. But sometimes, especially when I work late at night, I catch myself staring at one spot for too long. And then I realize I haven't blinked in minutes. Maybe it's just exhaustion, or maybe not everything dies where we think it does.